Yo guys, I'm Dunmere. I'm a rank 1 peak Supervive player and I have a Jin build guide for you guys. So in this video I'm going to go through and give you guys best builds for his items or his powers and tell you what I think his best level up order is also. Right into it, we'll start off with the items. Jin doesn't have a lot of options really, to be completely honest with you. There are a couple different things you can kind of experiment with, but he is a damage based character and so you can't afford to drop any sort of amount of that damage and go for one of these tankier items, right? So at the bottom of the list here, you're going to see a lot of useless tier items immediately that are just not going to be viable on the character because they're helms, right? There are a couple weapons in there, but I'll get to those later. So what is best on him though? So the absolute best item in my opinion is the amplifier. Amplifier gives him cooldown reduction on any ability he uses in repetition, before resetting when he uses another ability, right? But since he has 2 dashes and he's using these to get around the map and they're on a very low cooldown anyway, or relatively low cooldown anyway, you can spam it and charge it up really quickly and get dashes just non-stop, right? And considering there isn't something that's just, you know, necessary for him to pick otherwise, and he doesn't need a mana item, you can without a doubt go with Amplifier as just a constant setup for your character. The only trade-off you're doing for going Amplifier is getting rid of an option to go for Power User, since they're both technically that. Power User can be useful on Jin because he has a really powerful sets of items you can get that make him really strong, like invisibility items, but I still think it's worth it to go with Amplifier. It makes your base combat even faster. For the second item here, I would recommend Grace. I don't recommend this on a lot of characters, but considering he's in, you know, he can dive from range and he gets on top of people immediately, and he doesn't really, you know, he's either full HP or disengaging. Essentially, you can get a lot of value out of Grace, right? Using it to get a better flank, take space better around you, chase things down better, and like towards the end of fights, if you're, you know, you're full and you're hunting something down, which is not super unlikely to happen when you're chasing at the end of a fight. But Amplifier Grace is definitely a great option for him here. A secondary set of options I have is a Power User Turbo Booster. Feel free to swap Power User or Turbo Booster for either of Amplifier and Grace. I don't think it's quite as good. Grace and Turbo Booster are pretty quick, or pretty relatively similar in what they can offer, but you know, Power User isn't as good as Amplifier, but it's still a very powerful thing to have in general. Moving on to the actual, you know, tier list of these items here. Like I said, Amplifier best, Grace, Turbo Booster, and Power User all pretty strong. You can go ahead and swap out something like a Mind Blade if you just want to get more damage. It isn't going to change things too much. And like I said, you really shouldn't be running out of mana on this character just because of how low the cooldown costs are. Last Stand is also a viable option if you want to trade it out for maybe Grace or the Turbo Booster, just for some extra damage, or if you know you're like playing with a healer who can heal you up when you get low HP. Something like that is your way to go, because it gives you that bonus HP when you're bonus healing from any source when you're below that 40% HP threshold. The Soul Drain boots are your only option, really. The meditation boots, you just don't really need the mana, and your character's like never standing still. There is an option that you could go with it if you're doing like an Amplifier build where you're trying to sit there and spam your RMB to like secure some engage on somebody, but again, you really shouldn't need it, and your character already has built-in you know, ability to access high ground, so the boots aren't really useful either, right? Interweaver, Overdrive, Big Game Hunter, not the best. They could do stuff for you, but nothing too crazy, right? And the rest of these items, Swift Blade, not good. Rampage, I don't think you reliably get it stacked up, especially with your in and out kind of playstyle. Bubble Blade, useless. And then, like I said, the rest of these are helms, and so the helms are just going to take away too much damage and just not support what Jin wants to do, while also not giving him much HP in general. Alright, now moving on to the level up order. So the first ability we're going to pick is Jin's Dash. It's just such an important part of his kit, and it's really useful to have the dash, just in case you get into an early contest with enemies, and you need to move around the fight and potentially escape if things get hairy. Like I said, people oftentimes recommend going these, you know, big burst of damage ability to clear a camp immediately, but he has the good damage with his primary fire anyway, and it's just better to get in the habit of having your dash when you need it. For his second ability, we're going to go with the flip slash death blow combo ability, his Q. That one's where he's getting most of his burst damage from, so that one's really, really valuable to have, rather than just his R&B that's going to give him another, range teleport slash movement ability that you don't really need. It honestly is kind of a little bit out of place on his kit. Like, he doesn't 100% need it, so you can go ahead and skip that. Which is why we're also going to level up we're going to level up the upward knockback Q to level 3 first, because it gives you an additional 20% damage, which is enough to help you get some pretty hefty burst early fights when enemies don't have as much HP, right? So that's a really useful thing to go ahead and click. And then for level 4, we're going to go ahead and then we're going to pick the R&B teleport, right? At that point, it's pretty useful to finally have that extra ability to continue pushing fights and potentially engage with if there's an opportunity, right? And so for level 5, of course, we're going to go straight into the ultimate. The ultimate is quite useful. It's quite a pretty useful ability to use for its flexibility, right? To teleport out of fights that it can safely get you out without anything being able to body block you or have any sort of issues with that. So for level 5, we're going that. For level 6, which you should get in the same set of levels as the level 5, right? Usually at level 5 and level 6 together. We're gonna make our flip slash maxed to 3, and so this is the option we're gonna pick. It gives you a 300 HP shield, which is that's like a 23% or so HP buff for Jin whenever he's engaging, which is a really useful thing. Not to mention, when you get a knock with this one or a final blow with this ability, you get a reset on it. So you pop like that twice in a fight, potentially you're getting yourself 600 HP bonus shield. That's really valuable. It also makes using Delicate Barrier potentially viable. Not like super viable, but whatever. Compare that to the other options for Flash Dagger, the R&B, where enemies take 10% increased damage for 3 seconds. That's just not that useful. And then like a half second and then 1 second cooldown reduction on the dash. Like, that's not, none of these are comparable, right? So we're going to max our upward knock ability for level 3. For level 7, then we're going to go ahead and throw it into the dash. Having that extra movement reduction is very useful. It's an extra second off the mini dash and 2 seconds off the X dash, so that's good for sure. Compare that to having the ultimate on a lower 10-second cooldown, which is good, but usually you're using it to disengage with, so you don't really need it knocked down. However, it does get, it is more useful than knocking the cooldown on the R&B engage down, because the R&B engage is kind of used to continue pushing in fights, so you don't really need to use it all that often. So we're going to go ahead and put the ultimate down to level 2 for 8, and then we're going to go with the R&B ability for level 9. And like I said, that's because having a 10-second reduction from 30 to 20 seconds on the ultimate is enough to be able to use it multiple times in a fight potentially. And so, as the game gets later, like these fights get tighter, it's pretty useful to have that capability. All right, and now on to the powers. So Jin is a character with a lot of flexibility baked into his kit in terms of his ability to move around, and the character quite well does what he wants to do. So with that, we're mainly looking for abilities that are going to give us, a maximization of that, right? And so for this little power setup I have here, you should think about it in terms of how random the BR is and how you can't guarantee you're gonna get what you want. So you're gonna look to pick up the powers on the lower side of this tier if you happen to see them, but replace them with the ones up higher as the game goes on. Right, so starting off, we're going to have what I would argue are his most powerful sets of powers, which is the invisibility ones. Having a delicate disguise, the little ear looking thing at the top right, or a mana cloak, or the brushwhacker on the left of strong, that's going to give you the ability to just pull upon people without them knowing you. You can even just walk straight down mid towards them. You barely have to flank with these things on. and the enemy can't even see you before you're on them and destroying them, right? It's a really, really powerful thing. In particular, there's a combo you can use, which is Mana Battery and the Invis Cloak. This is going to make it so you can pop Invis Cloak permanently, and you're constantly restoring your mana when you're full HP. So that's really, 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 really powerful. Like I said, Invis is insane. The second most powerful set of options you have is amplifying his ability to get on top of people, or really to like just make your engages like more straightforward, right? If you have a blink stone on the top left or a grappling hook, and even potentially an abyss specialist, you can go on ahead and engage in a much more aggressive way, right? If you blink right on top of someone, it doesn't matter if you flanked or not, you're on top of them. You can even blink slightly behind them, and then you're just blowing them up. It's a really strong option on him, right? Same thing with grappling hook. You grapple onto someone, they're rooted, you're immediately blowing them up, right? And you can set it up so you hit your combo like right as you land on top of them with a grappling hook, and then they're just getting exploded, and right, easy clap. Other options are ones that are going to help your like raw team fighting, or your raw like self-sustain / ability to disrupt enemies mid-fight. These aren't as good options, but they're still good, right? You're gonna have things like the anti-mobility field in the bottom right, sand wall, the Berry Eater combo. These are all going to give you some sort of option to disrupt enemies in the middle of fights when you jump on top of them, or sustain yourself a little bit more, give yourself just a little bit of extra health to be able to burn through enemies. He doesn't have as much HP in general, so the option to sustain himself is really more just like giving himself a little bit of extra HP before you burn enemies down type of thing, or blocking like a cooldown or two with sand wall. It's not like you're trying to like hard sustain yourself, right? And then from there we have other options, you know, like Air Blast. Air Blast will do similar things, right? Knock people off of you just in case you just need to disrupt a little bit more after you've like killed someone, or stop something from blowing you up while you're killing somebody. But then we have some other fun options like the Delicate Vision, Delicate X-ray Vision, or I don't know exactly what it's called. The one that lets you see enemies through walls. This will let you flank and then set up your engages on enemies really aggro. It's not the best because a lot of times you'll be able to see where enemies are because of your teammate's vision, but it's a very powerful power in general, right? Same thing with Bungee. Bungee can be used to continue bullying someone when you're on top of them. Like you go, you flip slash, you bungee them, you slam them, and if they're like a tanky character, then you can just pull them back in, right? You'd probably just guaranteed kill a small squishy guy, but a tankier character, you can just keep pulling him in, right? And having the bungee can also give you the ability to kind of have some range poke in an early fight, so you don't actually have to commit, right? So that's a useful option too for Gen. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or have anything to say, go ahead and throw them into the comments below, or come follow me on my Twitch and my YouTube when I'm streaming, and go ask them there.